From time to time, the Ten Commandments take the stage in America's culture wars. Some municipality posts them in the hall where they meet, or some judge insists on displaying the commandments at the courthouse, only to have such moves later declared unconstitutional. Public displays of the Ten Commandments have always struck me as a strange choice of battles on the part of conservative Christians. Many such Christians often reject a great deal of the Old Testament law as having been superseded by Jesus and a new covenant. But I suppose that posting some of Jesus' sayings, blessed are the poor, love your enemies, turn the other cheek, do not judge so that you may not be judged, somehow wouldn't quite set the right tone. Posting the Ten Commandments at courthouses is sometimes justified with the claim that the commandments form the basis for our civil law, which always makes me wonder if these people have actually ever read the commandments. Only 3 of them, those against murder, theft, and false witness, actually correspond to our civil laws. And the need for such laws is rather obvious, so obvious we don't need God to tell us. Cultures that have never heard of the Ten Commandments have laws against murder and theft. And then there's the fact that much in our culture, in our economy, depends on violating some of the commandments. We're a 24/7 culture that has little use for stillness and rest, the very core of the command to keep Sabbath. Factories run 24/7 because it is more efficient. Stores and restaurants remain open 24/7 and proudly advertise the fact. And even many of those who actually try to keep Sabbath still expect the stores and the movies and the gas stations and places to eat to stay open for them. And if we subvert Sabbath with our 24/7 culture, we've made coveting the cornerstone of our economy. Every day we're bombarded with advertising designed to make us covet, to want things that others have and we don't. Much of our economy is dependent upon convincing enough of us that we need more and more, that if our neighbor has something new and better, we must have it too, and we should go into debt, stress continually about money, work longer hours, outcompete our neighbor so that we can have it. Of course, the Ten Commandments were never intended as generic rules to govern a well-run society. Rather, they were about creating a different, radically different, alternative community, a way that looked very different from the ways of the world, a way that looked a little like the kingdom that Jesus proclaims. And this radically different alternative community is perhaps best seen in those opening commandments about other gods, idols, and the misuse of God's name. Here we see the new thing that God is doing, the new world that God is calling us to be a part of. God bless America. It's something spoken on the lips of politicians left and right. It was a hugely popular song during World War II, and again after 9/11. And on the face of it, asking for God's blessing seems perfectly appropriate. But while I do hope that God blesses America, I suspect that very often our request violates some, perhaps all, of those opening commandments. Perhaps that surprises you. I know a lot of people who think keeping the first 3 commandments is really pretty easy. I mean, we don't live in a world with a lot of God choices. No temple to Baal or Zeus down the street, and the only idol, at least physical idol, that many of us have seen is in a museum. And it is true that language has gotten a lot coarser over the years. I can actually still remember the first time I heard the word hell spoken on television. Yet still, many of us try pretty hard not to take God's name in vain. But the commandments are about a different kind of world. They're about creating an alternative world that looks not like the world. And when God speaks the commandments at Mount Sinai, when God speaks them to Israel, this command about other gods is about hedging bets, about insurance. Many in ancient Israel thought that they could worship Yahweh and still offer a little something to the local fertility god, just to be on the safe side, to help ensure that the grain would come in. Few of us put much stock in fertility gods, but we know all about hedging bets, all about insurance. For ancient Israel, idols were often a part of this insurance. But the prohibition against images is not just about other gods. It prohibits images of any kind, including those of Yahweh. Yahweh is not like other gods. Yahweh will not be managed. Yahweh will not be packaged and brought out when needed. Yahweh remains mysterious, unpicturable, undomesticated, wild, and free. Israel can only conform to Yahweh, not the other way around. The commandment about misusing God's name perhaps captures this best. The translation we heard this morning comes much closer to what the Hebrew means. You shall not make wrongful use of the name of Yahweh your God. The issue here is not about foul language. It is about enlisting God in our causes. But this God will not be enlisted. Yahweh will not bless Israel and curse her enemies to suit Israel's plans, nor will God bless America and curse our enemies to suit our plans. Rather, God calls us, calls Israel, to discover true life and becoming part of God's plans. In the same way, Jesus does not go along with us, promising to bless us and make things go well for us if we'll believe in him. Instead, Jesus invites us to to follow him along a way that the world thinks foolish, the way of sacrificial self-giving that loves neighbor even when that neighbor is an enemy. Jesus invites us to follow him on the way of the cross. I'm pretty sure I've shared before a quote that the singer Bono once shared at a prayer breakfast in Washington, D.C. The quote says, "Stop asking God to bless what you are doing. Get involved in what God is doing. It is already blessed." And the commandments, the alternative community that they seek to create, is about entering into God's blessedness, about becoming a part of what God is doing. It is about discovering new life, life that is found in Sabbath, in the realization that the world will not spin out of control if we stop and rest, if we disconnect, if we become still and quiet. It is a new life found in reorienting ourselves to the strange ways of God, to the ways of God's new day that Jesus says has come near. Many who are members of this congregation know that we are entering now into the stewardship season. In popular thought, that means that we're going to try to convince people to pony up enough cash to keep the place running and to keep the staff paid. But such fundraising is not really stewardship. Stewardship is about how we utilize the resources that have been entrusted to us. There's good stewardship and there's bad stewardship. The precarious state of the world's climate is an example of terrible stewardship, of selfishly using the world's resources for our own purposes, rather than caring for God's creation that has been entrusted to us. So too, the use of our personal resources is a fairly accurate measure of our faithfulness. The way we use the resources entrusted to us, the way we use our money, our time, what we do with all that we have, shows what gods we truly serve. This year's stewardship theme, Bearing Fruit Together, is drawn from Jesus' words spoken the evening of his arrest. "I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me, you can do nothing." Faithful stewardship is about life rooted in Jesus, life that emanates from the way of Jesus, and the way we use our resources, the way we share them in the work of God, says a lot about who we are, about how we are a part of God's radical new community. You are the branches, says Jesus. We are a small part of something much bigger. And it is the center, not us. That concept is largely foreign to our individualistic consumer culture. But living into that concept is what joins us to the blessedness of God. Living into the strange ways of God is what joins us to that blessedness. Stewardship is not about paying for those things we enjoy and we like. It is about entering into God's blessedness, joining ourselves to the ways of God. It is not about getting a hold of a little spirituality that we worry is missing from our busy lives. It is about lives reoriented to the ways of God. And when we live in to the ways of God, when we live into that concept that we are the branches and give our resources to what God is doing, we will find ourselves more and more joined to Jesus. We will find ourselves more and more living blessed, transformed lives, lives joined to God's blessedness. Thanks be to God.